What made you quit a job, on the spot? Part 2. Going to the toilet, pre-meeting to negotiate a raise, I heard both directors of the company, small firm, everything ran through them, talking outside the window, that they were going to flat out refuse any offers and make the whole work overtime, to prove his loyalty, and he has no prospects anyway, where will he go? Enter the meeting with my signed and printed resignation in hand, slapped it on the table, after sitting down, and stood straight back up, saying, meeting over. I now work for a successful company, part of a brilliant team of 10 people, amazing pension, terrific bonuses and obtainable progression, with a great work-life balance. Half day every single Friday, till I die also. If you're being mistreated at a job, overworked, underpaid, whatever it may be, get your affairs in order, and walk. I was already having a bad day. My transfer request was denied, and supervisors were on my ass, like they owned it. Nearing my lunch break, I was stopped by a customer, asking about a price check. Me, not able to do a price check, said, please take it up to the front, they can help you there. Wasn't good enough. The customer proceeds to berate me, almost making me cry. Finally she says, how about you just go kill yourself? Like what? Knowing that management wouldn't do anything, I just left. F that. Being abused for minimum wage? Not worth it. Being hired to sell cars, then in the middle of training, I get pulled aside, and told I'm being moved to lot attendant. That position paid minimum wage and I didn't even get a chance to be on the sales floor. Left, and never went back. I was in my mid-20s at the time and was trying to find a possible career. Didn't have time for that bullshit bait and switch. I was working at one of those stands, that sells flash frozen ice cream droplets. You know the ones. It was at an amusement park. At one point, it's a hot summer day, and I'm standing in the sun in front of my -40-degree freezer, simultaneously, burning and freezing, at the same time. I have a long line of customers, because I was near the exit to a stunt show featuring a particular superhero that is a Knight of the Darkness. I scoop some ice cream balls into the plastic tray, slide my scoop over the top, to knock off the excess ice cream quickly, and then hand it to the customer in exchange for their money. A wild manager appears. Suddenly a manager tells me, I didn't level off the ice cream correctly. He takes the scoop and small bowl from my hands and levels it off, just like I had done for the precious customer. He then dumps it out back into the freezer and makes me do it again while standing over my shoulder. Mind you, I still have a long line of customers. So, I do it again and this time he also is not pleased, and berates me some, and makes me dump it out, and do it again. So, I do literally the same thing, a third time, and this time he's somehow fine with it, and wanders off, to go annoy another teenager, making minimum wage. So, now I am confused, as to what I was doing wrong and have a line of customers staring at me, leaving me thoroughly embarrassed. I process to overfill every container and hand them out to each customer, while not taking any money from them. Then I simply walked out to my car and drove home. I never turned off or secured my register, I never formally quit, I never said a word to anyone, I just walked away. If I was doing something wrong, then fine, but there is no time where it's appropriate to scold and reprimand an employee in front of customers, and I haven't been back to that amusement park as an employee, or customer, since. I worked at a sushi restaurant and we had secret menu items, that no one went over with me. The owner was sitting with a guest, I guess they were friends, and he ordered one of the secret menu items, and I said, I'm sorry, we don't have that, and she immediately stands up and started to scream at me and called me a effing idiot, and then snapped her fingers, saying, bitches, calling the other servers over. At this point, I was taking my apron off and grabbing my keys, to walk the hell out of there. I had a very stressful job, and was expected to answer Slack messages, from my boss at any time, or I would be fired. He was in a different time zone, so, often I would be woken up at 3 a.m., being yelled at, to do something. One day in the office, he was talking shit about me on Slack, and accidentally posted it, to a channel I was in. I was killing myself for this guy, and he didn't even appreciate it. I packed up and left, best thing I've ever done. I was working for a financial company in SoCal for about a month at the time. It was a little stuffy, but otherwise okay. Until my manager came over asked, why I took so long in the bathroom. Literally, 5 minutes to take a dump. He mentioned something about having to count it as a break, and me being more careful in the future or something. I laughed, handed him my badge and left. Upper manager bullied a co-worker until he killed himself, then the manager turned his attention on me. Yelling at me in front of subordinates, yelling at me over the radio, sabotaging my workload and projects. I simply said, "F no, dude, I don't care who you are, or how much money I'm making, I'm not accepting that level of abuse." I walked out and called the district manager, told him, I left my credentials in his office, and won't be back. When I had my exit interview, I was very honest, and was offered a lateral promotion to a sister company, but the taste in my mouth was simply too sour. I was already there 3 hours, past the time my shift was supposed to end, along with everyone else who was on my shift. We were all very PO'd. I get that you often have to stay after when you work in food service, but everyone from the next shift was already there, and there was zero reason for us to be there for 3 extra hours. Finally someone asked to go home and the manager started screaming in the middle of the restaurant floor that, just because your shift is supposed to end at 10, doesn't mean you get to leave then. I tell you when you get to leave. You are all just numbers on a spreadsheet to us. We can replace you in a heartbeat if you don't want to be here. So, I dropped all the money on the table in front of her and said, "Replace me then, F you." Found out later that they lost damn near half their staff that night, because most others followed my lead after. There was a huge football game the next day, right across the street from the place, and they got to deal with that, with no servers. I went to the game and had the time of my life, lol. It was effin' IHOP. It was Thanksgiving Day at Kmart. I was a teenager, and I had been working non-stop for 5 hours because of all the good deals. I had a drink under my register, and I took one drink of it. The assistant manager looked at me but didn't say anything. 10 minutes later, it was time for my much-needed 30-minute lunch. I proceeded to ask for coverage for my break and the assistant manager told me I didn't get a lunch since I took a drink of my Sprite. I then proceeded to tell her, "Too bad," and walked away, and got all of my stuff out of my locker and started walking out to the parking lot. Then the store managers all rushed out, begging me to come back and work, and apologized. They said I could take my lunch. They even had the assistant manager, pathetically, apologize to me. I think she got in big trouble, because she never treated me like a bitch anymore. Call centers man. Been at the job near 4 months, when an employee passed out behind me at his desk with a heroin needle in his arm. Managers had someone call 911, while they quickly grabbed all of the dude's drugs and needles, and stashed them in a locker. After the ambulance loaded him up, another employee asked me if I wanted to take my break and snort an 8-ball with them. I walked up to a manager, and peaced out. I was getting married. I had a temp job, and told them on my first day that I needed a weekend off in a couple of months for my wedding. I reminded them every couple of weeks, had it on the calendar, and even reminded them that Monday. That weekend came, and I was on the schedule. I told my boss that I needed it off for my wedding, and she said, "You're just a kid, can't you move it? We really need the parts." Admittedly, I was 21, marrying my 19-year-old girlfriend, but yeah. I laughed at her and left. We were scheduled Saturday and Sunday, too, attendance points, and you're fired, so I assumed that I'd be job hunting on Monday after my wedding. I went to another temp agency on Monday and had a job lined up for Monday evening. On Tuesday, the temp job called and asked if I was coming back. I told that person, the temp agency lady, what they'd done to me. She was upset that they'd done that, tried to get me to go back, but I liked the new job and stayed there. Worked a retail job as a cashier at store, whose name sounds like hose. One part of that job, as I'm sure many who have shopped there know, is to sign customers up for our rather predatory credit card. We were supposed to ask every customer, no matter the dollar amount of the transaction. Well, I was helping a woman, and told her she could save $X if she signed up for the credit card. She seemed interested, but I could clearly tell that English was not her first language. I grabbed one of our pamphlets and made it abundantly clear to her that this is a credit card, not a rewards account or something of that nature. When she understood, she said, "Oh no, not today." Understandable. Well, I didn't know one of my supervisors was standing behind me. After she left, he asked why I did all of that, and if I try to talk every interested customer out of signing up. When I explained myself, he said, "Next time, sign them up. They don't know any better." Handed him my red vest. That was it. I worked at a Dollar General for about a month. That's all I could put up with. The big thing I struggled with was How I was constantly criticized for not stocking shelves well, but I was never given specific direction as to how I was to improve at my shelf stocking. Literally some shit like, "You're stocking shelves poorly, do better," was what I got told by the manager many times. Cracking under this pressure on the last day I worked a full shift, I poured all of my might into what I believed to be the best shelf stocking I had ever done for that hellhole. I cleaned the bathroom spotless, but there was never a complaint about that anyways. I even had the key holder, assistant manager type figure, check all of my work on the shelves in bathroom, where I was met with praise and confirmation. To answer this Reddit question, the manager greeted me at the door the next morning for a run-through of my performance, where I was naive enough to believe that I was finally getting the pat on the back I had wanted so badly. Instead, she tried to convince me that I left a huge shit stain in the men's room toilet bowl, and left her with my worst stocking job yet. I got mad. Told her that I felt as though I was being treated unfairly. She told me that she was sorry that I couldn't take criticism. I told her that I was sorry that she had to pull applications and find a new sale associate to deal with her bullshit. Know your worth, people. Not on the spot, but I was passed over for a promotion for a role I've been doing unofficially for 6 months. There was no official position for it. When I started doing it, it was one of the manager's responsibilities and they delegated it to me. Honestly, I was happy to do it and I was frequently praised for how efficient and thorough I was doing it. So, when an official position opened up to do it full-time, I seemed like the obvious choice. A bunch of my co-workers didn't even apply for it, because they told me they didn't think there was any point, since I was obviously getting the job. They gave it to a guy that worked in a different department, and had no experience using the complicated system required for that job. Then, the manager asked me to train him in it. Except I wasn't really asked. I was told in a way that sounded like it was asking. We called it being voluntold. I refused. I said to the manager, if I'm not good enough to get the job, I'm not good enough to teach someone else how to do it. The manager then accused me, throwing a temper tantrum. I quit about a week later. Honestly, that wasn't the only reason. That was just the straw that broke the camel's back. Even the other managers couldn't believe he said that. I worked for a placement agency at a manufacturing facility. I had worked 7 of my 8-hour day, when one of the supervisors came by to ask anyone on the crew I was on if they would stay for another 4 hours. We all looked at each other and politely declined. They came back, one more time, to ask and again, we declined. Then they came back and demanded that one of us stay behind for the 4-hour shift or all of us were going to be written up for attendance. This pissed everyone off, but because we were work placement instead of employees, we were unsure who to talk to. Some of the other crew told the supervisor they can't because they have to pick up their kids, etc. When the supervisor left, the crew had multiple people saying they can't get written up again or they would lose their job. I had scheduled a dinner with my in-laws, so I called the husband and told him the situation and that I would stay. Told the crew, I'll stay, don't worry. Told the supervisor, got put on another crew that had worked for 1 hour, but was required to stay for the full 4 hours. Next day, I called the main office and explained the situation. They said they had a representative on site, due to this manufacturer being such a large client. Called the on-site representative, and explained the situation. Was told they have a lot of attendance issues. Again, explained I had never had attendance issues, and everyone on my crew was threatened with being written up for not staying 4 hours after their scheduled shift. On-site representative still defended the actions of the supervisor and threw attitude at me. Fine, I don't need you, I quit. And that's the story of how I learned about my workers' rights and workplace harassment. Worked as a waiter at a place that promised me full-time hours, but only gave me part-time hours. They expected me to be top of my game, despite not paying me enough and barely giving me enough hours to survive. They scheduled me to work on the day I was taking my girlfriend, who was visiting from out of town, to the station. And when I asked for 1 hour off, so I could take her to the station, they said no, and lectured me on how I was no more special than anyone else who worked there. It was raining all week, and there was a food festival on in town, so the restaurant was dead all week. I left that day and never went back. When I was 16, I was a busboy, off the books. Made $250 a week, working 35 hours a week, because they paid per day, as opposed to per hour. Manager comes to me and says, they're restructuring how the pay scale is, and said, he wanted me to work less days, same amount of hours, but for half the pay. I made him repeat to me his plan, and once he confirmed it, I said give me money for the week, because I'm leaving. Before I started working at Dollar Tree, I asked if I could have a day off on Sunday and they said, sure, and that they promised to give me that day off. During my first week working there, I ask every single day for a work schedule and remind them that they promised that I get Sunday off. That entire week, they refused to give me a schedule and called me at random times of the day to work, which was ridiculous, because at the time I had college classes to attend, so it was battle on what time I could work. When Sunday came, I was at a carnival with my husband. He bought tickets for the day and it was his only day off to spend time with me, and the moment we decided what to do together, my boss called and told me to come to work. I was baffled and reminded her that she and the others promise that today I could have off since I work all 6 days at random times without complaint. She said, in a very mean way, that she never promised such a thing to me, and demanded I come to the store now. In that moment, I told her to F herself and I quit over the phone. Within the next day, I made a complaint to the company on how unprofessional she and the others were with me and gave them pictures on how unsafe the environment was for our younger workers there. I had worked for a cleaning company and I had a total disaster of a person named Tina as my manager for about 4 months. Tina would work the night shift with a crew and basically did nothing. She would leave the majority of the work for me to do during the day, when it was a lot harder to do, as I had my own list of duties as well as whatever she left for me from her own list. I was teetering on the edge of quitting, but I hadn't found a replacement, when one day I got a call from head office that Tina had quit, and for about a month the job was exceptionally better and I effectively was my own boss. Things were going remarkably smooth for again about a month, when I got a text message from Tina, asking me to do a bunch of extra stuff. I called the owner, and they told me that Tina had approached them about coming back and that they were rehiring her in her former position, and I literally just packed up and walked out, about an hour into my shift. I had zero intention of working another minute for that woman, and held to it. I worked at a privately owned McDonald's when I was about 17. I worked in restaurants since I was 15. So I was kind of like the head cook, as far as that can go at McDonald's, LOL. Ran the grill, and made all the sandwiches. This manager, who spent 20 years working at the place, was a complete bitch to everyone in the store, but I worked day shift, and she worked night, so I never had to deal with her. One day, they switched her schedule, cause another manager went out of town. She got on me, because I didn't clean the shave that morning, grabbed a shitty used razor they kept in the office, and made me shave dry in the dish pit. About an hour later, we're getting slammed. I'm tossing out burgers quicker than 2 jiggles of a jackrabbit's ass, but because I was putting the onions on before the condiments, this waste of space starts flipping shit on me and telling me that everything is getting sent out wrong. I turned to her and said, "You're a bitch, and I'm in a hole. We can't work together." Threw my apron on the ground, and walked out in the middle of the busiest Friday afternoons we've had. I worked as a manager in this really awesome cafe/bar. My interview was basically drinking a bottle of wine with the owner whilst chatting. Totally relaxed vibe, local artwork on the walls, which she sold for no commission, indie music as background noise, so you could still have a conversation, etc. One of the guys who worked there was in a band and would often go on tour, and she always made sure his job was waiting for him when he got back. Fast forward 3 years, and she became pregnant with twins and decided that she wanted to be a sham, so she sold the place to a young guy who purchased it as a gift for his fiancée. A nice gift, no? But it soon became apparent that he did this because she couldn't actually hold down a job due to even the most simplest of tasks being entirely beyond her. It took me 4 weeks to teach her how to use the coffee machine. She spent the evening shifts giving freebies to her mates, and she totally gave up on using the panini machine. After finally mastering the coffee machine, she announced that they were going to be redecorating, so we would either have to take a week off unpaid, or use our holiday time. Everyone was forced to use the holiday time. Came back a week later, and we totally didn't recognize the place. It now had white walls, with huge TVs blaring out dance music, in a space that only had 12 tables, so loud that we couldn't hear what anyone was saying. We checked the rotas and I had lost 10 hours a week, but the band guy had lost 20 hours. Naturally we asked, WTF? And she informed us that she could run the place without us, so cut out hours. We asked if they could delay the new rotas by a month to give us chance to find extra work elsewhere. I was okay, as I had a second job that begged me to be full-time, but band guy didn't. She said that as we didn't have contract with her, she didn't have to give us any notice. Not gonna lie, I was fuming, so I took my apron off, placed my keys on the counter and said that, as we didn't have a contract, I didn't have to give any notice that I quit. Then, promptly walked out, and never went back again. The place closed down within 3 months. I worked for a junk company that initially started off pretty good, until it was bought out by a new owner from British Columbia. The new owner started implementing so many new policies that prevented us from making the decisions we once were able to make, and also new restrictions that would make us lose our profit share for the day at the smallest mistake. It didn't help that she also hired a douchebag ringer to be our new general manager, who could not have been more out of touch with normal employees. Not even a month after this new douche manager arrived, he kept saying we were messing up constantly, saying we've had the worst records of the entire company, the worst driving records, etc. It's like he only thrived off of telling us what we did wrong. So, we were really busy one day, and instead of actually starting work, he wanted us to have another meeting where he could scold us for messing up constantly. It was also only a week after the last meeting. We're only supposed to have them once a month. The meeting was set at 7:30 a.m. for him to scold us for half an hour and then get to work on a busy day, where we're forced to go as fast as we can, without messing up even once. The stress of being forced to work faster, while also screwing us over with all these stupid new regulations, had reached its boiling point with me. So, instead of going to the meeting, I called him at 6 a.m. and told him I was never coming in again. He begged me not to leave, and asked if I could at least do that one day, but I said, no, go screw yourself, and hung up the phone and blocked his and all his associates' numbers, then went back to sleep. I now work for myself, and from what I heard, after I quit, a ton of people quit from that place. I can't imagine it's gonna stay in business much longer. Edit. Wow, I have never had this popular of a comment. Thank you so much everyone, and don't let anybody tell you what your value is. Had a job where the people were toxic, the management was mostly toxic, and the other techs made themselves look better by making other techs look bad. I had 2 guys on my shift who would go behind me during maintenance or repairs and undo stuff I did and call it out over the radio for all to hear. So, I started recording myself making the repairs, and when I got called out and showed the video, I was told, "You're not supposed to have your phone out on the floor," and got wrote up. I walked out, with no warning, in the middle of the busiest weeks of the year, leaving them short-handed, with only 2 idiots to handle calls. I took a temp job, in a call center. It was outbound sales, calling people and offering them Time Magazine's newest book, Portrait of the Presidents. We had a rule of having to hear no 3 times on a call before we could end the call. First 5 minutes on the floor, I placed 6 calls and was hung up on, sworn at, and yelled at for interrupting dinner. After the 6th call, I took a deep breath, hung up my headset, and walked the F out of there. I worked in a call center for about a year, easy money. I was calling IT professionals at businesses, so they generally had to be civil, and the turnover was just incredible. They were constantly training new folks, some lasted until lunch, some a couple of days, most were gone at the 2-week mark. Owner just made it where the whole front office has to text her, so she can change our thermostats for us. We've had control over our thermostats for the last 10 to 15 years. It's not going to go well. Such a controlling thing to do, to think I should determine everyone's comfort level. Kicker, 85% of the time, she is not in the office. Awkward part is, if she was in the office any more than 15% of the time, it would be worse than no AC. I was a psych tech for 5 years, and the person who did the schedules hated me, because I turned her in on so much BS she was not doing. One day she took everyone off the schedule, making me work alone, with 36 clients in 2 buildings. No nurse. No other tech. No staff. I called my manager, and he said, "Oops, we will try to call someone in." No one would come in, and they would not let anyone have overtime. Mostly had 36 clients, all screaming at me for detox meds, smoke, and anything else. I tossed keys down, and told clients I quit. Here is keys to all the doors, have fun. All, but the nurse drug door. They tried to sue me, saying I willfully abandoned sick clients, but as soon as they saw they left a psych tech by themselves, and told me to hand out meds, they knew they were effed. I got a huge check to keep my mouth shut. This was back in the day, shortly after college. I was still working as a delivery driver at a local pizza place. It was expensive pizza and the tips were good, plus it was during the height of the Great Recession, so I was just glad to have a job. Because I had just graduated, it freed up my schedule. I started regularly getting put on the lunch shift, which blew absolute donkey D. All your work is from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. and it's super stressful, then it's completely dead, aka no tips, from 2 p.m. to 5 p.m. So you're just doing dishes for minimum wage. Then the manager started to try and send me home anytime there wasn't actively a delivery, so I'd get halfway there and then a delivery would call in and I'd get called back. End result, he saves 35 cents in wages, I spend money on gas plus wear and tear on the car. Then one day I come in and look at the schedule. It's the clopen from hell. I'm on from 5 p.m. to 3 a.m. Thursday, 11 a.m. to 5 p.m. Friday, and 5 p.m. to 3 a.m. Saturday. The only shift where you would make real money is the Saturday shift. I said, F that, and left a note on his desk, resigning.